welcome to all of you. And I would like to invite the 4 panelists. They're amazing people coming from different parts of the world. And I would like to invite first Laurie. She's coming here from East Africa. And Laurie is a certified executive coach with Stanford Seed, and she's a venture partner with Raiven Capital, based out of East Africa. So welcome, Laurie, to the stage.
Thank you.
So the next person I would like to invite is Omar. He's a lawyer, turned startup founder, turned investor. Currently serves as a general partner with Algebra Ventures, one of Egypt's prominent VC fund. The next person is Syed. His background in private equity, banking, and consulting. He also built and scaled many companies. He is based out of Dubai. Welcome, Syed. And our last but not the least, probably the youngest, is Adil. Yep. He believes in talent focused on technology, and he has been doing this for the last 20 years. So welcome to this amazing panel. And I would like to also welcome the audience here who have come to listen to this amazing panel. So we'll kickstart the whole session by asking Laurie a question. You know, with your distinctive role of donning 2 hats, one as a certified executive coach and business coach, supporting startups, scale-ups in East Africa, and another as a partner at Raiven Capital, your experiences are invaluable. Could you provide insights to set the tone for this panel session? Maybe you take a minute and a half.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I will focus my conversation on primarily sub-Saharan Africa and just some general statistics. The African continent education spending by government was about 4% of GDP, and it's been stagnant. So the African Union declared 2024 the year of education to try to promote more additional funding by governments in this area. Out of 54 countries on the African continent, only 12 are spending 15% of their public expenditure on education and 4% of GDP, which is really considered the minimum amount. So what does that mean? It means that there's a lot of opportunity for EdTech and education startups and capital allocators that are looking to invest in the sector. And I think we have a big role to play in that area.
So thanks, Laurie. I think East Africa is the one which you are so familiar with. Thank you. Omar, you had the unique journey of founding 2 startups, one in the realm of online tutoring and the other in health tech, before taking the helm of Algebra Ventures, a firm based in Egypt. What insights can you draw from your personal journey that would be valuable for aspiring EdTech entrepreneurs in our audience?
Sure. So I can try and share my story very briefly. So my first company was a tutoring marketplace. So we would connect K through 12 students, primarily high school students, with current university students or recent alumni of top universities who wanted to tutor on a part-time basis. And this was in Egypt, right? And we would sort of connect them, and then they would physically meet. This was 2013, 2014, so before online tutoring took off in our region. And the company sort of grew, but had relatively high churn, and the primary issue we faced was disintermediation. So we would connect the 2 sides, and then they would transact off-platform. And we used to call it the curse of Sisyphus, because every month, in order to grow, we would have to acquire new customers, right? And so 2 key learnings there. One is it's very difficult to change consumer behavior. We knew going in that this was going to be the primary challenge, but we thought we could create incentives that would retain customers over time and alter this tendency to sort of for either a tutor to get paid more or a student to pay less. So we tried to create more value as the platform or the intermediary. Very, very difficult. The other thing is you need to have a business, with a certain level of recurring revenues in order for you to be able to scale over time. So that was one takeaway from the EdTech experience. We sort of did that for a number of years before we realized that it wasn't going to work, and that's when I sort of folded that business and then, joined my brother in launching another company in the health tech space that thankfully did work. But in general, EdTech is one of those spaces where it's very difficult to make money if you're not sort of serving the right niche. So some of the themes that I think are interesting to look at are, vocational training, things like Skillshare or lynda.com, that target a very specific niche within the workforce market, or guild education, right, which sort of has a B2B approach and reaches out to companies and then offers these part-time flexible degree programs to upskill the workforce. So that's an interesting area. There are these sort of celebrity MOOCs like Masterclass. That's another area where historically it's been possible to make money. So you have these pockets within EdTech. I think the problem that a lot of EdTech entrepreneurs face is they go into this space with more of a sort of impact-driven thesis than a commercial thesis. And for that to work, you really need to have very patient capital, because it can take a very long time for those outcomes to mature. So yeah, just high level, those are some of the learnings.
Yeah, one of the interesting things which I observed in India is post-COVID, most of the online tutoring business moved to a hybrid one. Mostly physical and very little of the online. Online was more like a supportive nature, and the revenues they seem to be generating is fantastic. The physical model. So, it's just a different, I think, different country, different culture. I think
India is slightly ahead of us in terms of online tech adoption. So online tutoring probably made its way to India sooner than it did the Middle East.
Yeah.
But even when you look at companies, like Baiju, who were unicorns, they're struggling. It is not easy to crack tutoring in particular. So I think there was a time when even YC, they would occasionally have these requests, the RFPs, right? Requests for proposals, and they would invite entrepreneurs to submit certain ideas that they have a thesis around. And I think, when I was an entrepreneur, I would sometimes look at YC, and one year it was like, it said something along the lines of, while we think there's an opportunity in tutoring, historically it's been very difficult.
Very different.
To make money in that space. So, so it's sort of just a space that you need to be cautious as you go into. But there are other verticals in education, thankfully, that are attractive.
Yeah, thank you, Adil, thank you, Omar, for your opening comments. I'll move on to Adil. As a former board member of the Kazakhstan's Sovereign Wealth Fund, and now heading Big Sky, a venture capital firm, your diverse background in Central Asia brings a very unique perspective. Could you share your insights on the potential of EdTech in the MENA region?
Well, first of all, my thesis goes after very simple notion, talent first. Whatever happens, technology comes after as an enabler, whatever. And then the other thesis is you go early. You go early, and as early as schools, as early as kindergartens, etc. Because this new generation is already different, and if you cannot instill the right habits, the right approach, the way, and actually adjust yourself, which is another issue, then you're going to lose the market. And then I definitely agree here with the niches. Riches are always in the niches. This business is tough, very long term, longer than any other niche actually. So, so you go early, very early. You stick with your niche, and you develop an expertise, and you offer a very, very unique value proposition. Then it might happen in the region, it doesn't matter anymore from their own. A very similar approach can work in here in MENA, it can be somewhere else. What we've been observing is it takes time as well. Human being develops slow. Our business in EdTech is slow therefore. Changes overall education system is very conservative. Many different ways, very conservative. One of them, sometimes they're as conservative as miners and the oil and gas people, you know, because it's messing with your mind and then the concepts, etc. And then there are certain ways people get used to. That have been a challenge in our startups, which we've been working. And then from market to market, it changes afterwards. So early, niche, again. And you have to offer plenty of talent. If you cannot get it home, you have to import. So that's another thing. I mean, and it's always a conflict there, right?
Yeah.
But I believe in globalization. I still am. I know there are big changes all over the place, but I think the more you mix, the better. The more cultures are mixed, the better. The more open markets, the better. Because it just simply accelerates the whole thing. The process, the experience exchange, the knowledge share, everything. I kind of like as well the formats. You might want to experiment. And here is all about talent. If you have talent, money will come. Money doesn't solve problems with talent. Talent comes first, always. System wins the whole thing. So it's not about money. It's all about people and talent first, and then the rest comes.
Identifying the problem and finding a solution to that niche what you're talking about.
Yep.
Absolutely. So thanks, Adil. Sahil, in June 23, you highlighted that the Saudi startup and funding ecosystem is still in its nascent stage, underscoring abundant opportunities for expansion. What guidance as a partner of Dubai-based VC firm, Global Ventures, would you offer to startups, founders in Saudi Arabia seeking funding in this dynamic EdTech space?
It's been quite a shift in dynamics since June 23 to where we are today. And what I would say is the entire regional ecosystem is still sort of in its early stages, but it is at a crossroads and an inflection point in the best of ways. We're seeing strong influx of capital, strong interest. If you look at the region in the way that we define it as Global Ventures being the Middle East and Africa, the full continent, then we actually see this as sort of probably the last frontier market that you can actually deploy into in terms of the ability to grow, the macro fundamentals, as well as the top-down attention that the ecosystem has been receiving, whether from the sovereigns or from other ecosystem enablers and players. Case in point is where we are today. You can see the scale at which this is happening. It's important to note that while there is capital that's starting to get allocated into the kingdom, into startups in the kingdom and across the region overall, we still need to make sure that we set up the right infrastructure steps and approaches to be able to do this in a structured way. We've been fortunate to back actually an EdTech platform out of Saudi called Classera. I'll give them a shout out. They're in Hall 1. Please visit them. They're fantastic. A couple of years ago, and they've been scaling and building this business in an incredible way. They're now in over 30 markets globally, starting from the kingdom.
Oh, from here.
And so it is actually very possible to build mega success stories from here, to scale them, to have the right allocation of capital towards them. But it's about bringing that balance. You need to have the right infrastructure, the right layers, as you mentioned earlier, talent, identify the problem, the solution, the capital will follow, and the entire ecosystem is moving at a breakneck speed. We're very excited and very fortunate to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Said. I think you were also talking about so much of fundraising which you have done and the type of expansion you are expecting in this region. Maybe a few words on that would also help at this early stage.
Sure, happy to. Like many startups, we ourselves have also been able to attract capital to be allocated into this region. We're active, we're deploying, and EdTech is one of the sectors of interest for sure. We've actually published research on the EdTech space. We published a report 2 years ago, and it was a fantastic sort of beacon for founders that came to us, approached us, and shared what they were building, what they were up to across the entire region. We've invested in a platform called Nexford University, which is now a US accredited challenger university, helping postgraduates, if you will, upskill and develop their talent, all the way through to those that did not have formal education and want to capture certain elements and modules that they can build out their capabilities with. We've also invested in a platform called Meta School, which specifically focuses on upskilling web developers into Web3. And we've invested in an early childhood learning platform called Lemsa as well, which provides a lot of content. So the regional ecosystem, particularly in EdTech, is quite vibrant and buoyant. And the fundraising environment around it is predicated on what Omar was alluding to earlier, which is the traction, the performance, the metrics. So you need to see that. You need to see the repeatability, but you also do have an abundance of opportunity because access to health, access to education will not be solved by just building more schools and traditional infrastructure. You have to go digital, you have to adopt technology, and you have to use that as a key enabler to growth.
If I may,
Sorry?
yeah, if I may,
sure,
I would love
please.
just to jump in and build on a couple of things that were said, specifically around what I've seen in East Africa. So the point around technology, I think, is very germane. Kenya, of course, is very much a digital mobile-first country. They have M-Pesa, and the whole country basically operates on mobile money. And I think that's enabled many startups in different sectors, including the EdTech sector, to design mobile-first, digital-first. So we see a lot of EdTech companies that are delivering content on the phone. If the learner doesn't have a phone, their brother and sister has a phone, their parents have a phone. And so the delivery is completely digital. It can be done on the go, it can be consumed on the go, online, offline, feature phones, smartphone, they can use USSD as well as apps. And so we meet the learner where they are. Also then it's bite-sized. And so you get a very specific, small amount of content. It's often gamified to keep the learner engaged and very data-driven. So for example, if the learner gets a test, the feedback from the performance on that test then goes back into the algorithm, and very nicely curated learning content is the next thing that's delivered to the learner. The other thing is a lot of this is pay-as-you-go. And so you consume content, you pay for that content. So there's the idea of a subscription model, not necessarily. That flexibility around the digital delivery, the digital payment, super important. I think cost, as you suggested, is very difficult. The cost of content has to be cents on the dollar. The acquisition cost, you have to be using partners to do it quickly and to scale quickly. So there's a lot of pressure around costs, and I think scaling is absolutely critical in order to make these models work. The last thing I would say is that there is some element of impact, to your point, and the best EdTech companies that I've seen have designed the impact framework into the company at the beginning. So they're very clear what impact KPIs they're looking at, how are they going to collect the data to understand if they're successful, and what kind of reporting do they have that will go to their stakeholders, including their investors.
Thanks. So let's move on to the next set of questions. Adil, I wanted to ask you, since the launch of Vision 2030 by His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, placing significant emphasis on human capability development and EdTech leading this path for this objective, how do you foresee the potential for EdTech investments in the kingdom over the next 5 years? And a sub-question, from a futuristic perspective, how can EdTech startups contribute to solidifying the human capital index, especially in the context of large language models, AI, more specific to Saudi Arabia?
All right, I'm not a big expert in Saudi Arabia, but in the MENA regional world. But what I've been observing in two other markets we operate, which is Southeast Asia and Central Asia, the government's approach is very important here, and then the way it worked out is. For instance, in Central Asia, it's close to this part of the world, right? Southeast Asia is a little different thing. Top-down was implemented by introducing the right policies, but also offering a platform and simply integrating a lot of different solutions and experimenting with that a lot. That was one thing. Second thing that helped to facilitate was localization of the content. Language matters because it's engraved in the culture. It's actually DNA, if you wish.
That's right.
So it's very important to take the best practices and this cooperation on the higher level. What worked out in Kazakhstan, for instance, is my hometown, home country, is a direct cooperation between the government and Coursera, for instance. And then they simply opened up the whole thing for Kazakh content, and then we were discussing it before. A lot of translation happened, but also adjustment happens as well. Channels are different from country to country. Some places Instagram works better, some TikTok took over the whole thing, and then whatever other platforms they have. And some, when digitalization happens in the schools earlier and the government invested already into the infrastructure, some infrastructure is in place already. So you plug in and you offer that. And it does play out faster when you adjust and you change the content to the country's need, to the region's need, to the level of development, etc. Now, the ministry and the government works gets the faster result when it's open for those experiments, when certain designated clusters appeared already, and they can do the pivoting fast, changing fast in that particular places, and then the launch fast. So that have been very successful.
Yeah.
What I've been observing, and then again, there are certain needs and niches, and then where they compete as well. That goes from region to region, very specific. Also, get experiment. So long as you're open for experiment and you do it fast, and the government drives it a lot, within 2-3 years you can make very essential results.
I mean, if you look at LEAP 2024, the amount of effort which has gone in. So obviously that I'm sure that there's a top-down effect. They really want to make significant changes to the economy, and EdTech is going to play that important role.
It's going to be huge. It's one of those enablers. If we use it right, the whole thing's going to shift and change very fast.
I'm happy to speak about the Saudi.
Sorry?
I'm happy to speak about the Saudi angle if helpful.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
And to tackle that specifically. So yes, the government and top-down approach was definitely very important. Ministry of Education working with the platforms that exist here, in particular the LMSs, was a critical part in terms of accelerating adoption. But also, let's not shy away from talking about this. COVID was a major accelerant. In terms of distance learning, in terms of people needing to shift, and to your point earlier, Omar, in terms of shifting consumer behavior, this was forced on everyone. And so COVID did act as an accelerant for that adoption, and it enabled a lot more in the EdTech space broadly to pop out, whether it's the tutoring side, whether it's the actual content coverage, whether it's schools having to still, until today, implement distant learning. I mean, a few weeks ago, adverse weather in the UAE, they shut down the schools, but rather than say day off and we'll do another day later, they shifted to distance learning. So that ability to sort of toggle on and off does exist. And that is back to the core of it, EdTech. So schools are adopting technology solutions and platforms. The B2B angle exists, the B2C angle exists. And so the opportunity is sizable, it is massive, consumer behavior has shifted, and forced on us or not, it is fact. And so we just need to embrace it, move forward with it, and enable the right platforms to continue to succeed. And that, as you said, Adil, is happening from the top-down approach with the ministries, with government, enabling that fully.
Thanks for your input. Omar, I have a question. As per WAMDA in 2023, investment in fintech sector in Saudi Arabia was $1.7 billion. Whereas EdTech got a funding of a mere $47.6 billion. The Egyptian EdTech sector received only $5 million. It's really a drop in the ocean, right? On the other hand, Singapore government has announced that people aged 40 and above will receive Singapore dollar 4,000 as skills credit, or the future skills credit, to pursue and refresh their career tech skills, especially focused on AI. with the whole world changing and everybody competing in this AI and everybody jumping into it, how do you envision the trajectory of EdTech investments in the region and more focused on Saudi Arabia?
So I think two things. So the investment in EdTech went through a bit of a slump following a period of very significant hype. So at the time that I was starting my company, the buzzword was adaptive learning. And this idea that you can tailor content to the individual needs of students, as opposed to, because if you think of schools are a byproduct of the industrial era, right? The sort of supplier belt approach to education, where you put everyone in a room, you deliver the same content, and you sort of expect standard outcomes, right? And people aren't like that. Everyone is a different learner, and a lot of people get left behind by traditional education. And so again, a lot of mission-driven founders wanted to change that by introducing adaptive learning systems. The part of why that didn't take off is because in order for that to truly see widespread adoption, you need to go through the school system. And one of the toughest things in the world is trying to sell to schools, right? And you face all kinds of resistance. Unless there's sort of a top-down government mandate, it's very, and the sales cycles are very long, and the average contract values tend to be low. So, not to discourage anyone from pursuing EdTech opportunities, but you have to go into this with your eyes wide open to the challenge. Now, I do think that we're actually right now experiencing somewhat of a revival and a heyday of EdTech, but it's not EdTech startups that are reaping the rewards of that. It's actually the big technology companies. So, everyone here has probably experimented with ChatGPT. I'll give you an example. I wanted to deepen my understanding of economics. And so I asked ChatGPT to produce a curriculum specifically tailored to my needs, to engage with me in a Q&A that would highlight where my learning deficiencies were, and then suggest resources based on that conversation, right? I recently decided to learn Greek, and so I've been using Duolingo for that. Duolingo has AI models that specifically produce prompts based on my specific psychographic and substantive education profile. So, it's difficult to predict how this is going to continue to evolve, but I think the wave of EdTech entrepreneurship that we need to see needs to take advantage of a lot of these large language models and build on top of existing AI infrastructure. Right, because the LLMs themselves, in my opinion, over time will get commoditized, and so it's the user interface, it's the prompt engineering, it's your ability to acquire and engage users in a certain way that's going to matter. But you need to take a bit more of a sort of macro approach when thinking deeply about where the opportunities in EdTech are.
Thanks. So I also wear a second hat. I run 6 schools with about 5 to 6,000 students. So I can see the resistance from the school system to introducing technology. So total, empathy with what you said makes total sense.
Sorry, can I, if I may?
Sorry?
If I may. One of the interesting things that Omar just said highlights the shift in consumer behavior. The approach.
Yeah.
Rather than go and look for a book, he went to his device first. His first go-to in terms of going to learn a new language wasn't to go and look for a course.
Yeah.
It was
very specific.
Figure out how I can learn it with a different type of platform.
Yeah.
And so that shift in user behavior has happened. So whether the adoption is happening on the B2B side or not, it's happening on the consumer level, which will enforce it on the B2B level ultimately. And whether it's big tech that benefits or not, ultimately big tech companies will always be acquisitive. If you build the right platforms with the right moat, with the right niche, and your business is in and of itself scalable, unique, and attractive, it will be a target for big tech. So again, let's wrap a positive spin and a wrapper on what you were saying earlier. there is positive sentiment as well to be captured here.
Yeah. So I just don't have the time. Otherwise, I can share with you my experience. I have conducted surveys of school teachers and high school students. World of a difference. So it's a lot of challenge.
No,
So moving on,
And just to add one thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
To be clear, I don't want to be an EdTech doomsday prophet. I think the opportunities are absolutely there. You just have to take into account sort of cross-industry and cross-technology shifts that are happening, as well as shifts that are happening in consumer behavior right now.
Yeah.
As you deliver the value prop.
Yes. Thank you.
So moving on, Laurie, it's reported that Saudi requires 3 million programmers, Egypt requires 1.5 million programmers over the next 5 years. With the increasing demand for the skills of programming on one hand, the LLMs, though NVIDIA CEO says you don't need programming skills, I think I have a different opinion. Do you see this as an investment opportunity in startups who can bridge this demand-supply gap? And what role can venture capital play in supporting initiatives to address this need?
Yeah, I mean, we've started talking about that already, and this for me is the most exciting part of the space. There's a company in Kenya called Moringa School, and they consider themselves a career accelerator for IT professionals. And so they go deep into these different types of training, technical training. Of course, now it's a lot around AI and related technologies. And what's great is there are so many corporate partners. They have over 300 corporate partners that want these students when they're done. And Moringa trains them, they get tested, they have a baseline skill set and experience, and then they get placed for an internship with a company. So there's so much pull and demand for technical talent. There's such a scarcity. I think the challenge for companies like Moringa is how quickly can they keep on top of the technology? Because what we expect now is any kind of AI-related technical person, prompt engineer, LLM engineer, there's an expectation that with the technical tools available, they can do 10 times the productivity that they would have had on their own. And so I think it's, do they have the tools? Are they training on the latest and greatest tools so that that technical talent that graduates can add as much value as possible into these companies? But generally, yes, I'm very bullish in this area. This is the one area where I see companies really pulling startups. There's not enough talent coming out. How can you move faster?
The other opportunity which I see is also the certification, because many of these companies might be having it, but will the companies or will the government accept that this company is providing the right quality? So if there is some sort of a certification agency, I think that would also play a big symbiotic role.
It's a
Now,
great
there's a very general question, which I thought I'll open it up to the whole panel. NVIDIA's CEO made a statement recently that every country needs to have its own AI infrastructure. If you may call it, he used the word as sovereign AI. Now, he opined, was to take advantage of the economic potential of AI, while each country having to protect its own unique culture. I think totally relevant statement. Do you see this as a great opportunity for startups in Saudi? Like a partnership with government, especially aligned to Vision 2030? What advice can you give startups to make the sovereign AI a reality in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? I mean, this is an open question to any of you.
I mean, I'm not going to say much except that this is an opportunity for NVIDIA.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think a lot of the sort of push right now is actually the infrastructure coming from the infrastructure companies that stand to benefit tremendously from sort of widespread adoption of whether every country needs its own AI infrastructure. I don't know.
Itself is a big question.
He's biased. Let's just leave it at that.
But sovereign AI as a concept, I think, is very important, This is being spoken about in many countries. I have heard about this in India also. I think this just happened that he was speaking about it recently. People are worried and concerned about it. So in that context, I thought this whole thing would be. I agree with you on the NVIDIA part.
But it's already been rolled out in the UAE.
Sorry?
It's already been rolled out in the UAE.
In the UAE.
We have the Falcon LLM that's already there in
Okay.
the UAE, out of Abu Dhabi. Done a lot of work in investing and developing that and getting that infrastructure out there early on. And so from a regional perspective, we're already seeing movement there.
Moving in
And
the
it is
direction.
an opportunity. I concur with you as well on the contrarian point, but is there an opportunity? Absolutely.
Great. Thanks.
I think in general, I'll just jump in as well. I think the opportunity with a lot of these LLMs, because I absolutely agree with you that these become commodity very quickly, and they're trying to prevent that. And it's all about proprietary data. What data do you have that no one else has that's very valuable to you that you can use to fine-tune these models? And so I think that the first question might be, what is the use case? In what ways would we find this helpful and useful? And if we're clear about that, then we'll have a clear direction to what kind of data do I want, what kind of data do I need, and how do I fine-tune it in a way that it meets the use case?
Yeah. So, a small question to the side. How can venture capital firms bridge this digital divide between public schools running by the public funds, and the private schools, which obviously have a lot of funds and are able to access latest technologies like AI?
Well, I can take you on this, I guess. Well, just to address the first question, you said it. You have to go from region to region. I believe in regional cooperation more so than in the sovereign AI per se. Development of infrastructure, every country is different, and then the capacity of the country, financial, budgeting, and everything else. Not everyone can afford it. Let's put it that way. And not everyone should. Probably it's not worth it. So it's about data control. It's about a lot of other work that you need to do. Regarding the public schools and private schools, I always see private schools as more agile, more flexible, faster, and I believe in combination of that. What's happening in many markets, and you can see it like in Malaysia, when they liberalized the whole market and had a lot of different private schools entering, offering different education, different style of education, different agenda, different curriculum, etc. That is a good thing. The more the better. Problem with public education, their task is to ensure the minimum required amount of education for the workforce that is there, and that's pretty much it. They cannot with the pace that they move, with the funds that they have and with the scale that they need to stretch resources to, they simply will never catch up.
Be able to catch up.
It's not going to happen. Let's just calm down there. It's not going to happen that they're going to have a huge leap there. No. But when you have a combination of things, when you have a diversity of approaches, so you have different methodologies, curriculums, etc., a lot of private schools is a good thing. They don't need to be large. They need to be fancy. But the more the better. And then you need to involve all the corporates. Because they will consume it.
Yeah.
And you got to go from the client always. Then the whole thing's going to just shift and change, and it's going to be a lot more viral.
Great. Thank you. I would like to now request the audience, if you have any questions, we can take it up. I can see one hand up there. I think the person with the mic is coming next to you.
Hi. Hi guys, I'm Azaz. Thank you for all the insights. So I actually have a platform by the name of Olive in the UAE, which is a youth recruitment platform. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for collaboration when we talk about EdTech specifically, because we partner with a lot of universities to get the students on board. We do have some sort of upskilling initiatives as well. So for example, we have bi-weekly master classes. We have someone from McKinsey coming in later this month, for example, to deliver one. But what kind of scope do you think there are for partnerships with EdTech companies to actually help them with getting these people that they're churning out and teaching to actually match them with companies and internships and jobs and so on? And are there any successful examples that you might have seen in the regions that you're operating in?
Yeah, great question. Syed, would you, since you're from Dubai, you have enough experience?
Happy to. I think you're talking about a little bit of a holy grail in terms of being able to educate in place, right? The commercialization aspect of it is fantastic because on the one end, you know what people are looking for, on the other end, you know what you need to skill them with and what you need to train them with. By the way, in a previous capacity, we used all of one, so congratulations, great platform. But just to be clear, I think what you're talking about isn't straightforward. It is a little bit of a holy grail, and it's an absolute matchup of data. And so I think, not to sound like like a broken record, but this is where the uniqueness of AI can come in and really solve for this. Because if you're able to match up the two data sets and start to do that matchmaking, the platform becomes super powerful, the monetization on it becomes super scalable, and the solution on what you're solving for, demand versus supply, matches up very beautifully.
I hope we answered the question. Anybody else? Oh, there you are.
Hassan Murad from Kashida. We develop digital learning experiences, and I'd like to get some insight on the sort of investor appetite to invest in content, digital content for education, specifically for adult learners, and what would increase the interest of investors in that area.
Who would like to take
Kind of
that?
missed it.
Adil?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this earlier. I do think that there are opportunities, especially in B2B. I think it's important to target specific verticals and to be cognizant of what the sort of lay of the land looks like. But you have, publicly listed companies in the US that have done this very successfully. So it's more a function of localizing, because if you're just going to teach a negotiation 101 course or a legal drafting course or whatever it is, it's easy enough to find those courses online. So Arabic language is a theme that we're generally seeing as an attempt to localize, but I don't think it's enough. I think it's important to sort of go a little bit deeper and maybe be hyper focused on very specific verticals and sort of create technical content around those verticals, and then maybe you have an opportunity.
Thank you. So I think I'll move on. We just have maybe one question for the whole group quickly. Drawing from your global experience of venture capital, could you share a few challenges? I can see Dave already there giving me the time. So go ahead and share the lessons learned and the challenges you have faced with EdTech firms. I think that could be our last question. Laurie, would like to start with? We'll go with
Well, thank you again very much for the opportunity to talk about such a very important topic. I want to reinforce what a few of my other panelists have said. I think one of the big challenges of this sector is the commercialization. And the other challenge, in my opinion, is investors and other stakeholders have very different, sometimes varied opinions if a product they feel should be part of the public good should already be offered by government. What is the role of capital allocators and private enterprise in the sector? So I think these continue to be questions that we need to talk about and understand. And I think there will be continued pressure on the path to commercialization, as well as now this expectation around adopting the latest technologies, which are really augmenting what an individual can do in their role quite significantly.
Omar, would you like to?
I think I've
You're covered
said
more or
enough
less.
on the topic.
Okay,
yeah.
great. Adil?
I guess we just have to understand everything is cyclical. We will be back to EdTech, no doubt. All of us will continue investing in EdTech. We did invest before. AI is just a period. It will be over soon. It will go into specifics, it will go into applications and verticals, etc. It's just too much noise around it. And then we'll be back to reality. We'll go after business and economics. Every time is a case-by-case thing. So it's okay. Just cool off, continue working. Whatever you do, for instance, at your stage, just dig it further. That's the main message. And then what's happening here in MENA, and that was a characteristic of the whole region, is here now in the kingdom. There's like total radical embrace, accelerates the learning. I think this is the business model here. Fueled with the capital, it gives you another advantage. And I think that's something workable. It proved to work before and it will continue working. And this is the largest player here. So I'm happy to be here, happy to observe the whole change. It just will offer plenty of opportunity for anyone to grow. One of the few places in the world, including Africa and some parts of Asia. This is the place. So don't miss it.
Saib?
Sure. The toughest problems are the toughest problems because they will ultimately yield, if you crack them, strong commercials. But you got to have high conviction, and you got to have the drive, and you got to have the fuel to push behind it to actually get this done. AI is ubiquitous. I agree with you. It is an enabler across the board. It's not in and of itself investable as a vertical. You need to solve for the commercialization aspect by tackling the toughest problems, which typically have the largest TAM. So if I'm going to talk about it from a VC perspective, identify the large TAM, superimpose problem, your unique solution with your moat, defensibility, and that should sort of come together as a great sort of combination.
Yeah, thank you. So few key takeaways for me. I think the VCs, the big honchos here on the stage, I think they all are talking about taking things calmly and making a good pitch, especially for startups, which is more focused and down to earth rather than giving some high expectations and high figures. I also liked what Laurie talked about, mobile first. I think EdTech is moving in that space, and I think this is the way things are going to happen. I see a big opportunity, especially in Saudi, Jordan, and Egypt for the growth, but I think they have to be more realistic. Startup founders have to bring in their pitch deck, I think, more focused. I think this is what I see are 2 or 3 key takeaways. I hope you agree with me.
Thank you very much.
And I think I'm going to hand over the mic to Dave.
Wonderful, thank you so much. A massive round of applause for our panel. How good was that?